Right, I think I'm actually going to give you 6 golden rules for losing fat, but I'm only going to put 5 in the title because I feel like this first one, it's a bit of a bonus rule. It's more along the philosophical side of things than the technical side of things. It is, however, probably the most important rule. So the first and most important golden rule for losing fat is you have to want to, and more specifically, you have to want to more than you want to regularly fill your stomach with calorie-dense foods. And I'm not saying that everybody should want to, unless of course you are clinically or morbidly or any other species of obese. Of course, in that case, you should want to lose fat. But if it's just like most of us, for aesthetic purposes, then there's really no pressure, no obligation. I myself have embarked upon dieting phases before when I've started out thinking, yeah, I really want to get shredded. I've been really enthusiastic about it. And then I get halfway into it and I think, actually, I think I'd rather just eat good shit all the time. And so at that point, I didn't persevere.
Determination, self-discipline.
I didn't listen to some motivational shit and crack on and grind and dig in. I just quit.
We look at hard work.
I just decided not to, right? And I'm 100% at peace with that decision because I think I can be honest with myself and recognize the difference between giving up on something you actually want and just rationally deciding that something isn't actually worth the cost. So, bonus rule, you have to want to. Yo, I'm just going to jump in to let you know that it's Bulk's 15th birthday, and so for a limited time only, this discount code will get you this through the link in the description. Yes. Okay, one more quick thing to note before we get into this list. I'm not going to have a calorie deficit as one of these rules. Now, of course, that is absolutely essential and should be assumed to be implicit within all of the other rules. However, I don't think it's really the theory that people struggle with. I think 99% of us know that you have to consume fewer calories than you expend in order to lose weight. But that's not what people struggle with. It's more about the practicality of actually making that happen. And so that's what I'm going to focus on in this video. Rule number 1, control your satiety. So let me start with an Oscar Wilde quote. I'm sure this is unnecessary, but the only way to yield, the only way to get rid of temptation is to yield to it. Right, listen, you are a human, I hope. You're a human for like hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years. Hunger signals have enabled your gene pool to replicate, right? AKA, they kept you alive. Hunger is an irresistible force, and your mere willpower is not really any match for it, nor should you be trying to pit your willpower against hunger. A, because hunger will win eventually, and B, because anytime you use willpower, it's kind of draining, isn't it? It's like it saps your energy. It's like when Pikachu does the big electric shock thing. And so I think it's far better in the long run to just try and avoid feeling hungry in the first place. That means consuming food that requires fewer calories to make you feel full. It might mean staying hydrated, because it's actually possible to feel like you're hungry when actually you're just thirsty. And it might also mean timing your exercise tactically. So foods that are high in satiety rating tend to satisfy one or more of these criteria, and highly processed foods tend to be lower in satiety. So at all times, the question when looking at food should be, how many calories worth of this do I need to satisfy myself? In terms of training, you'll probably find that cardio helps to curb your appetite more than resistance training does, and that might be a reason, firstly, not to train too soon after your last meal, and secondly, to finish your resistance training sessions with some cardio, and that should go some way towards bridging the gap between meals. If you just go and lift, say an hour after your last meal, then the chances are you're going to want to eat again as soon as you've finished lifting, and that might only be like 2.5, 3 hours after your last meal. That's not really a feasible meal frequency if you are dieting. Rule 2, be massive like me. Alright, what's rule 2? Alright, it's pace yourself. So, let me employ a basic analogy. Right, let's say you're a bus driver and your route goes from point A to point B with many steps along the way. Now, a good bus driver isn't one that gets to point B, the end of the route, in as quick a time as possible. It's one that hits all of the stops along the way at the right time, right? Does that make sense? Basically what I'm saying is that's how you should be trying to approach your weight loss, particularly if you are trying to hold on to your muscle mass. So my first advice to anybody who has just decided to embark upon a weight loss or fat loss, or you know what I'm saying, kind of journey, would be just to like chill out a bit, have a sit down, take a few deep breaths, calm it, lad or girl. Let the wave of enthusiasm just wash over you, then get up, make a plan and just do stuff like you're a robot, mate. So I understand that losing weight can be part of a broader overall transformation in people's lives, right? And it's something that people understandably get enthusiastic about. However, one downside to enthusiasm is a tendency to bite off more than we can chew, and if you do that, it's just not going to bode very well for you. So if you set your calories too low because you're trying to lose weight really fast, or you give yourself loads of cardio to do, then you're just going to burn out faster, and you'll either increase your chances of falling off the wagon, get into like a binge starve cycle, or you'll just quit altogether because you'll judge it as being too hard when really you just made it too hard for yourself. Instead, just figure out roughly how much weight you should be losing each week, and then set that as your target and monitor as you go along. And if you lose a little bit less, then you can put your foot on the gas a bit, and if you lose more, then you've got the option even of easing up a little bit, but you can base that on your own subjective perception of how difficult things are for you. Rule number 3, what gets measured gets managed. So if you are like turbo obese, that's not the technical term. If your doctor calls you turbo obese, then you probably see a different doctor. But if you're that fat and you're just trying to get down to like kind of fat, then you can probably do that without tracking anything, just by moving more and eating less, right? And even if you're just a normal dude and you're doing a 12-week summer shred, to win £1,000 off someone, or to go Croatia on a stag do with the boys, whatever, you can probably make some progress, at least initially, without tracking anything. But there is going to come a point where it's going to be very, very helpful, if not necessary, to start tracking stuff. And the main things are going to be your body weight and your calorie intake. Now, there's a third variable to this equation, which is your activity levels, but that's a little bit less quantifiable. So for that, you can just assume that on average you have a relatively constant activity level, and then you can just track like how many workouts you do or how many minutes of cardio you do in a week or something along those lines. If you're not tracking your body weight, for example, then you might not always know if you're actually making any progress, or if you are making progress, then if it's a good rate of progress. And particularly if you are getting very lean, like shredded, then there won't always be visually noticeable changes. In that case, some weeks the scales might be the only indication of any kind of progress, and if you don't have that, then you're more likely to carry on with things when you should be changing, or changing things when you should just be carrying on. If you are really averse to putting food on a set of scales, then you can employ more rudimentary ways of tracking things. If you really want to measure your food in handfuls, then, or pocketfuls, or spades, I don't really care, man. Spades aren't convenient. You're not going to lose any weight doing stuff in spades, but you know what I'm saying, right? It's portion control rather than strict tracking, and that is still certainly better than nothing. Rule number 4, consistency. So this was a rule in my building muscle version of this video. To be honest, it could be a rule in pretty much any video about achieving anything, couldn't it? It certainly applies here too. Sometimes all you actually need to do is carry on, right? I used to coach people, I don't do it anymore, but sometimes I would get the weekly check-in email and I'd feel a bit bad, you know what I mean? I'd feel like I was ripping people off a bit, because I'd respond just saying, carry on, because that's all there would be to do. And sometimes you don't have to overcomplicate things, and that is the best thing to do, especially with losing weight. There's so many variables going on, there's so much random fluctuation that sometimes your weight can stall for like a week or 10 days for no discernible reason. There will be a reason, but it's just not discernible, and it's not that your calories aren't low enough. And then you might get to the point where you think, well, maybe I should reduce calories, and then all of a sudden your weight loss just gets back on track before you even had a chance to do anything. Now, of course, not always, if that is consistently stalled, then you do need to change things, but even if you do, then that is part of your consistent approach. Observe, monitor, react, rinse, repeat, ad infinitum. At the beginning of a dieting phase, you can lose weight pretty fast, and it's cool, it's exciting, But eventually the progress will slow down, the weight loss will slow down, it will become more gradual, the motivational video will be but a distant memory, and nothing will be left but you and your daily routine. Waking up, going through the motions, consistently chipping away day after day. Alright, rule number 5, don't get bored. I actually mean that on 2 levels, but first, I just mean it literally, as in, don't actually get bored, because eating because you're bored is a real thing. Actually convincing yourself that you're genuinely hungry just because you're bored and open the fridge is a real thing. But there's a difference between feeling like having a donut and being genuinely hungry, right? And you'll find that if you're actually busy, you know, you're going about your day, you're running your errands, you're doing whatever you got to do, then that busyness kind of filters out all the kind of grazing temptation. Secondly, I mean, don't get bored in terms of the training you're doing and the food you're eating. So if you are trying to retain as much muscle as possible, then obviously the majority of your training should be predominantly focused around resistance training, and then that should be supplemented with cardio. But even within that, there is a lot of scope for different modalities or training methods. So if you don't like running, just don't run. I think it's proper boring, right? So I prefer to play sports, and I'll do that as much as I can. And if you think that doing 4 sets of 10 with 2 minutes rest in between is proper boring, then I mean, I'd rather you just did like calisthenics or some kind of weight-based circuit, or dare I say it, CrossFit, right? Because although they won't be as advantageous in terms of hypertrophy, if the choice is between lifting weights and not lifting weights, then I mean, obviously choose lifting weights, no matter what form that comes in. And with the food you eat, just try not to make it a chore, right? You know what is negligible calories? Fresh basil, yeah, fresh coriander, herbs. You know what else is negligible calories, right? You don't have to track garlic. There you go, I'll give you permission. Probably get away without tracking onion. Mushrooms, negligible calories again, probably don't have to track that stuff. You know, there are millions of spices or even spice blends. If you're not so confident, you can add to your meals. Essentially, there are lots of ways that you can make your food more interesting without turning it into this calorie car crash. And if you can do that, you're going to make the whole process less of a chore, more enjoyable, and you're more likely to stick to it long term. Alright people, I hope you found that helpful. Obviously, I could have chosen like a million different things. These are just some tips that I thought might be of use, and some of the most important things that I have, I guess, distilled from my many years of trying to lose some fat. And so if you found it somewhat useful, even if you just hated it, you thought the whole video was shit, I'd appreciate if you just like my video, subscribe, get me to 1 million. I know I'm not even at 500,000 yet, but 1 million would still be nice, like, you know what I mean. Alright, anyway, see you later.
Jordy Lenny is my hero.